Seconds. Okay, now we are live. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Salatu salamu ala Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Amma ba'd. Sheikh Danish, I appreciate you turning up today. Apologies for the delay. Obviously, admin sometimes it catches up with us, but I appreciate you putting some time aside for today. The format is the same as usual. Obviously, we had a really good conversation last time. So yeah, it's just one of these things where anything that has been on your mind, any things that you've been deliberating about recently, anything that you think is worthwhile sharing, then by all means, I'm an attentive student, and inshallah, you're the teacher for this session.
No, Bismillah, I just wanted to continue off what we were speaking about last time, about really how Ramadan is a time to exhaust yourself and not judge what your actions are or the fruit of your Ramadan based on what happens after. Because that's never a way we're supposed to think. Just like when you're in Mecca, you do as much tawaf as you possibly can, right? It's the special ibadah of Mecca. So of being, there. And likewise, the special ibadah of Ramadan, for Salat al-Tarawih, you'll do more Qiyam al-Layl, and you'll do more Quran, in addition to the Fard, right? Which is fasting. So think of it as you're in Umrah, where you have the special energy to do more things, and you don't think, well, okay, I'm here in Mecca for 5 days and I'm trying to do a khatam. I'm not going to keep this up for the rest of the year. Why do it? Same with Ramadan. Don't think about what you can keep up for the rest of the year. Because, the fact that you're thinking you're going to even live another year is a ghafla, really. So you're not supposed to see it as your spiritual journey where you're the main character and you're always seeing like, okay, my first year is like this, but I'm setting myself for an epic second year. Because just greatness is waiting to manifest for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand for sure. It's one of those things where I think, like you said, we tend to put ourselves as the main character, right, in these type of situations, where we have this idea of just wait until I get my, my second wind or my third wind or my fourth or fifth. It's interesting because I think even to the point where we should be praying in the sense where we don't even know if we're going to make our next salah, let alone the next year or beyond that.
And that's one of the tragedies, right? It's like we become so used to hearing pray as if it's your last prayer, enter this Ramadan as if it's your last, and it's just a cliche to us. It doesn't really resonate. The reality of it is something we need to really contemplate. You're not guaranteed life. You're not guaranteed another salat. Sudden death happens all the time. So it's a ghafla to think it can't happen to you.
Ghafla.
Heedless, like being heedless.
Okay, yeah. It's you're going with not the correct awareness almost. You're going
yeah.
I see, yeah. It's a very interesting thing. I mean, look, you said it a second ago, and I couldn't agree with you more. This thing is repeated oftentimes the same way that we repeat, the typical tropes of Ramadan is pray as if it's your last prayer, pray as if it's your last prayer. How do we internalize that? How do we actually maintain this idea?
Just look at death statistics. I mean, it's the main thing. Like we're all supposed to be taught as kids. Every breath is a step closer to death. You're only moving forward in life. You're not getting any time back. So just the fact that it happens to so many other people, it's the one thing no one can guarantee you. It's true. So the more you reflect on death and the reality of it and how it can happen at any time. Look at natural disasters, for example. Everything's okay, then everything goes haywire. So it's just a reality, and it's not supposed to make you paranoid. It's supposed to move you to good action and make you someone who's ready to meet Allah. And I will, to be a little fair, there is literature that would say, for example, the sign of an accepted Hajj is that, you become better afterwards and things like that. That in its place is okay. But what I'm really critiquing is the New Age style of conveying this, where like you're the main character,
Yeah, and also there's a lot of I think unfortunately because Ramadan is such a monumental event, there's so many different kind of old wives' tales that go around. Or if this happens, if you have these these feelings after Ramadan, or if you fall into the same sin after Ramadan, it's for certain sign that it's either been accepted or not accepted.
See, Imam al-Ghazali, he comments on, for example, the 3 elements of Tawbah. One of which is you intend on never going back to it.
So run me through the 3 real quick. The sincerity in your repentance. You need to hate the sin, And then what's the third one?
Sin. It's like you need to cut the sin off.
Okay.
Oh man, I'm blanking. But one of them is like you commit to not doing it again, right?
Mm-hmm.
You cut it off. But Imam al-Ghazali, he says about that, even if you are going to go back, you still make tawbah because you're knowing you may not get the chance to commit that sin again.
Oh, okay. So if you know, okay, I have a propensity to commit this sin, I'm going to make.
And you don't have an intention. You don't have an intention of giving it up.
Yeah.
That's what he's talking about.
Yeah, you're aware that you might. Your intention is, okay, I'm going to just try and handle it as it comes. I'm not going to put an intention out there to say stop.
No. Like you, not you, but someone goes to the club every single night and does haram.
No.
And but every night he's making tawbah while planning the next night to go again to the club, right? And do haram again.
Yeah.
Even though it's on his schedule, tomorrow night I'm going to do this again, he still makes tawbah, knowing that he's not guaranteed to live tomorrow to go to the club again.
Okay. This is interesting. This brings up a good question. What about people that are struggling with addictions or sort of like bad habits, this kind of thing, and they're in this position where they feel maybe, okay, I make repentance for this mistake that I make, but I know I have a high propensity to do it again. This is something.
I mean, there's real addiction, and then there's just weak willpower, right?
Okay.
So, for example, if it's a drug, I mean, I'm no expert on this, but if it's like heroin, where if you quit cold turkey, it can actually harm you.
Yeah,
that requires some specialist type stuff. I can't really talk too much about that. Mm-hmm. But if it's something else like marijuana or any other thing that's called an addiction, that's just weak willpower. No, you just build the willpower and you cut it off. Mm-hmm. And one of the problem with modern da'wah is babying and mothering these type of people and telling them it's okay, one step at a time. Mm-hmm. And that's a great disservice because it doesn't let humans achieve what the human is capable of achieving.
Oftentimes we go down this route of it's a journey, take it one step at, like you said, one step at a time, take it soft. And I think, like I know myself definitely when I think to myself, I definitely benefit more from the strictness or sternness. Some people, they don't benefit from this. It kind of pushes them away. But in some things, I think you need to have a baseline strictness. I mean, a new Muslim, you're not going to say it's okay, you don't have to pray yet. You take your time, right? No, the expectation is you have to start praying straight away. Obviously, the level of perfection of that prayer is, is rated for their experience. But some things, they require sternness. And I think I tend to agree with you with certain types of addictions or certain sins, which are more so willpower rather than like a clinical addiction. Toughness there needs to be had.
And if somebody knows he's going to fall into certain behavior, he takes the steps to cut off whatever initiates that first drink, let's say,
Yes, yeah.
Because you're responsible.
Down the road and saying, "Oh, I end up here every time. I wonder how come it happens." Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. This is a good, I think, a good point to kind of discuss. Oftentimes you find that different groups will lean on one side versus the other, right? Like one side is extremely tough, one side is extremely soft with certain things, and to strike that balance is an interesting thing. I think toughness, obviously, the prerequisite for toughness is it requires wisdom, right? You can't just be like tough without any sort of insight or any sort of understanding.
Well, this is not really being tough, to be honest with you. It's just expecting something out of yourself. It's demanding excellence from yourself. And the bare minimum is in the haram, right? Now, how you would convey that to somebody else requires wisdom, compassion, hikmah, all of those type of things, right? But there's a difference between the correct understanding of, the good and the bad, and the hierarchy of actions, and then how to guide someone else for that. So right now, I'm primarily speaking for one's own self. How do they view themselves? Don't make excuses for yourself. That's mainly what I'm pushing. But for somebody else, you can't really impose, high himmah for somebody, high aspirations for somebody else. Although you can convey that via example and then showing them a better way and then inspiring them, and like one of the other problems is we see that people, empathy can have a downside. So empathizing too much, I know it's hard to leave the sin. I know it's a challenge to do, to wear hijab, to, pray in public, or to pray when, other people have classes, to step outside and do salat. But anytime you want to achieve something, anybody who's into performance or achieving results, they're going to tell you, deem the mountain insignificant. Don't dwell on how hard it is. Focus on how you can actually do it. It's not that difficult, and then you'll be able to do more.
Yeah, this is valuable. So there's actually a difference when it comes to dealing with the self versus dealing with someone else. Dealing with the self, just to kind of paraphrase what you're saying here, requires a sternness. It requires a seriousness of approach. Dealing with other people requires that softness, that forgiving attitude, that assumption of the best, but without coddling too much, without playing into it too much, without giving people free license to do what they want, essentially.
Yeah, you could say that. But again, dealing with other people, we could say it's an art, not a science. Dawah is an art, not a science. Helping people is an art, not a science. So it's not going to be that mechanical. And at the end of the day, for people in any position of da'wah, of leadership, of institutional tarbiyah, we need educated people, educated in the tradition, educated in being around righteous people, educated in the prophetic tarbiyah, to really know what to do with the different types of people they're dealing with. And you can look at the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam methodology and different instances of him dealing with different people, and you'll see it's not just A for B. It's not that mechanical.
It's not cookie cutter. Oh, you take this route and that's it. Yeah, I see.
Right. That's why I don't want to just say general things.
I think when I'm trying
for your own self, yes, push yourself.
Yeah. When I'm trying to overview this, by the way, I'm not trying to say this is restricting your view.
I know.
Yeah. It's interesting you say this, actually, because I came to Islam through the argumentation da'wah, through the debates, right? Through the Christian and Muslim debates. And very much, it was, for me, okay, I came to a point where I realized, these Muslims, they got good arguments. It's very hard to find someone that poses a real threat against the logical arguments for Islam. However, I speak to some people I know, they hate the debates. They hate it. And they're Muslims. They've got Iman in their heart, but they hate the debates. It brings nothing to them. It doesn't bring them closer to Islam. In fact, it pushes them further away. And in those moments, you can see, okay, there's a difference in character here and what inclines.
I'm with you. I mean, I think the debate stuff's very good.
Yeah.
Other people can't stand it.
Yeah. For me, I think for a Western perspective, because I grew up in the West, right? I grew up in a traditional family. My mother's Chinese, so I grew up in quite a traditional family. But for me, coming from a Western perspective, we are raised with this idea: the science is the haqq, and we have the methodology, right? That's what the Western ideal is. We have science, and that's our methodology for understanding reality. And the only way to challenge this type of approach, I believe, is through logical argumentation. When you start to bring down the barriers and the boundaries of what the Western philosophical and scientific sort of methodology is, then you have to start addressing things that are beyond the scene, right? Things that are beyond kind of the dunya sort of understanding or the study of the sciences. I think that's why it's such a valuable approach, because you need to break the logic circle that they have, the physics student has, or the Western academic has. But then again, I do know that there's a lot of people that come to Islam because, they see a Muslim person, that Muslim person smiles at them in such a way it inspires them. I don't want to negate this, but I think from a Western perspective, you have to really tackle the challenges, the dogmas that we have with our society, which are not religious anymore. They're I
think that's why these things are fard kifaya, because everyone's suited for different areas, of da'wah. So, for example, for some people, it's easier to just be out with other people and spend a lot of time with them. For others, that's quite difficult. And another effective way of da'wah is, for example, having soup kitchens, feeding people, spending time with people. Loneliness is a big problem in the West. People are really just lonely, have no one to spend time with, Also, a lot of Islam spread via trade, right? Muslim merchants, honest dealings, character, showing what Islam is. So, when something's fard kifaya, we don't really need to push it on anybody else. And just be happy it's fard kifaya, not fard ain, like a communal obligation, not individual. And everyone has their strong suits. Free healthcare would be a great avenue for da'wah as well, right? Things that help people. and show the benefits of Islam.
This is really interesting because da'wah, for me, from my perspective, I've got a very narrow view of it, which is the proliferation of Islam through the convincing argument, right?
What part of the UK are you in?
Pardon?
What part of the UK are you in?
So I mean, like around the London area, right? So as far as
Hyde Park, is that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Speaker's Corner, right?
Oh, okay.
So like you know, culturally we have a very big confrontational, conflict oriented culture, right? Which is like people want to test their ideas and argue for the benefit of it. But you mentioned something here which is actually significantly more important. You look at the amount of people who have been given a remedy to like a disease of modernity through dawah groups. Loneliness, you mentioned. Loneliness is a disease of modernity. It's not something that we've dealt with before. Families and communities lived and supported each other. But you have people who have spent, you know, the past 10, 15 years of their life singular, no family, no friends, no support. That is a person who, just by being shown a community, shown a brotherhood or a sisterhood, they would come to Islam. I mean, not for sure, but you know, this is for sure more powerful than arguing with them and saying your ideas are wrong and I'm going to tell you why they're wrong. You know what I mean?
I mean, a lot of times the people who even make these arguments, it's emotional.
Yes.
People who make arguments against religion, they had a bad experience with the religious figure, right? So the proofs don't matter. It's just so ingrained in them that religious leaders, and they projected them, unfortunately, even to the prophets, that they're all, you know, not what they say they are.
Yeah, true. Sheikh, this is I've really enjoyed this conversation. You know, I think next time, inshallah, if we have time, I'd love to go a little bit further into the methods of da'wah, the types of approaches, because like I said, I've got a very narrow purview purely because of my experience. And I think even just, you mentioned soup kitchens, you know, spending time with people, a remedy in loneliness. I'm realizing da'wah, even health service, da'wah is so much wider a sort of a branch than kind of just arguing with people. Even though I do
arguing is important, you know, like I guess we both know people who just can't stand it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. My wife, number one, you know, she when I start to bring this home, she goes, "I'll leave it with the dawah boys. You guys have your argument. Don't have it with me." MashaAllah. Okay, Sheikh, just one last thing as far as, you know, if anybody's watching and they wanted to reach out to you, understand a little bit about kind of what you do, where would they look for you?
The website, insheikhsclothing.com, which again addresses religious manipulation and conveys the misuse of religion, how to respond to that, and like I mentioned earlier about how that actually affects a lot of people, where they'll have a bad experience and then have doubts that is the whole religion like this at its, you know, foundation. Because a lot of the atheist arguments, they're not logical about the arguments Islam is making, but it's an attack on the prophets themselves. And those arguments resonate when people see a corrupt religious figure.
It's usually from a basis of religious trauma, right? Someone abused or someone utilized power from a religious perspective to, you know, cause some negative impact on someone's life, and then it influences their opinions on the religion, which is obviously it's a massive thing, right? It's something that we need to address in our own communities as well.
Yeah, so that can have bad effects on people. So it needs to be responded to.
Barakallahu feek. I appreciate your time today. Inshallah, Allah accepts your fast from you. It's only midday-ish for you today, isn't it? Or is it evening? I forget which side you're on.
It's evening.
Evening, okay, evening side for you. So your fast is already over. I appreciate your time. Ask Allah to keep us sincere upon the truth. Anything good from us is from Allah. Anything negative from us or any mistakes from us is from us ourselves. Jazakallahu khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.